Hi everyone, I'm Shelly from There's No Place Like Home at redheadmom8.wordpress.com. I've been doing some pretty heavy videos the past couple of weeks, most of them regarding articles that I've seen or advertisements that I've come across that have something to do with education, like with public school or with homeschooling. And I was going to do another video like that today, but to be quite honest, I really need to give my brain a break. So I decided to go back into my homeschooling videos, something a little bit lighter today that I hope will still be helpful for you in some way. And yeah, just like the video that I just posted yesterday, I've still got the crickets going on in my living room. My chameleon has still not eaten all of her lunch, so the crickets are still here chirping and chirping away. So that is what you are going to hear in the background. But today what I really wanted to talk to you about was homeschooling and the trouble with too much fun. One thing that I really love about homeschooling is the way that you can tailor it to meet your family's needs. And yes, a lot of times that includes making things fun for your kids. And I do talk about that a lot. I talk about trying to do fun activities with your kids, things that will engage them, things that will keep them interested so that they will learn. And I do not feel any differently about fun that I did before. What I've been thinking about though is that I bring up fun so much that I don't want to give newer homeschoolers the idea that homeschooling is always 100% fun all the time, or that it should be 100% fun all the time. Because truth be told, there really does have to be a balance, because you can have too much fun. Some people might agree with me, some people might not agree with me, but this is just what I have experienced with my family. And just remember that everyone's family is different, but I'm going to just share with you what I have experienced. So there are a couple reasons that having too much fun might not be such a good thing for your homeschool. Now, the first instance that I'm going to talk about with having too much fun is that I know that there are a lot of people who are very iffy about making their kids do things that they don't particularly want to do. I know that a lot of times, people will say that their kids don't want to sit down and do their math, or they don't want to sit down and do spelling. And all kids are like that. I think it's a very rare child who absolutely enjoys everything that they do in school, whether it's public school, homeschool, any kind of school at all. You're not going to really find many kids who like to do everything and never complain. So I think it's really important that you understand that sometimes you are going to have to, as the parent, have your kids do things in your homeschool that are not fun for them. But they're things that are important for them to learn, things that are necessary for them to learn. Now, yeah, if your kids are fighting you tooth and nail about doing something, the first thing you want to do, you want to, kind of take a step back and look at the entire picture. Is there a reason that your child is acting this way? Maybe it is too advanced for them. Maybe it is too easy for them. Maybe it doesn't fit their learning style. But after you have gone through and assessed the situation, trying to kind of troubleshoot, so to speak, and you really can't come across that one thing that you think is an issue, you have to understand that sometimes kids are kids. And a lot of times if they don't find something particularly enthusiastic for them, they're going to fight you on it. But the thing is that, there are so many things in life that are worth doing that aren't particularly fun at first. And I think that it's a really important lesson for your kids to understand is that things worth doing are not always going to be entertaining from the get-go, but that doesn't mean that they aren't going to help them out in the long run. And that, that is something that is really important to instill in your kids. So, while it's awesome if you can find like fun spelling that your kids really enjoy, or a fun math program that your kids look forward to doing, the fact is that there is likely going to be some aspect of your homeschool that your child doesn't really like to do so much. But if it is something that is one of those crucial basic things that every child really does need to know, you're going to have to come to a point in your homeschool where you have to think to yourself, okay, this is going to be that time where I tell my child that I know that you don't really like this, but you're going to do it. And that's what our role as the facilitator is all about, is making those judgment calls on when those times are necessary. So another reason that sometimes, having too much fun can be an issue, and this is actually something that I experienced more with my kids than the last one. I mean, yeah, I'm not going to say that all of my kids, absolutely love everything that we're doing, but my kids at this point, they have our routine down pat enough that they really don't complain anymore. They know exactly what it is that they have to do, and they're comfortable with it. So I think we've moved past that, and I'm glad. It's not always like that. There are seasons in homeschool, and right now our season is pretty calm. Lord, please don't test me on that one for saying that. But right now, that's how it is. But the thing that we have been having issues with when it comes to fun is that sometimes too much fun can actually start to interfere with learning. And let me just give you some examples of things that I have particularly experienced with my kids. So last year, I believe it was last year, I shared a video about how to get your wiggle worm to sit still for read aloud time. And in that video, I was talking about how, I will sometimes let my kids use fidget spinners while they're doing their read aloud, or sometimes I might let them play with Play-Doh or draw pictures, or just do various things with their hands while they were sitting and listening to the read alouds. And I will tell you that at first that did work. At first I could give my kids fidget spinners, because they needed to have something to keep them moving all the time. So yeah, fidget spinners and Play-Doh and sometimes Shopkins. Sometimes I would tell them to, wow, these crickets are really loud today. Anyway, sometimes I would tell them to draw an illustration of what I was reading about. But what I actually began to notice over time was that as my kids got too comfortable with doing these things during read aloud time, as it became like more part of the routine for them to be doing these things during read aloud time, I began to realize that they were paying more attention to these things that they were doing rather than the read aloud itself. Because, it just got to the point where my kids are used to doing narration. But I began to notice that when I would ask them to narrate, they weren't able to tell me what I had been reading about anymore. Or a lot of times if I had told them, okay, if you want to draw, you can draw, but it has to be about something that I read about. And so what would happen is that they would focus so much on that one drawing is that is the only part of the story that they would hear. And the rest of it, they would just block out. So while, it's important to try to find a way to help your kids learn to pay attention, with some kids, fun things like that, they don't tend to work so well. Some kids might be perfectly fine. I mentioned that at first my kids were okay with it. They were still paying attention. They just needed something to keep their hands moving. Over time though, as I said, homeschooling is in seasons. That season ended and it got to the point where it was actually starting to interfere with their listening skills and it was interfering with their learning. So I did stop allowing my kids to do that. Now another example that I have is that several times I've posted, mostly on my Instagram, just videos of my kids dancing to our call to homeschool song. And it was kind of a way for them to get their wiggles out before we would start homeschooling. And it was fun. And then after the song was over, everyone would sit down and we would start in with our devotionals. And that was another, one of those things that at first, they found it to be a lot of fun, but they understood that once the song was over, they had to sit down and get ready to get started. But once they got too comfortable with that fun time before homeschooling, that dancing time, the time to, let off their steam before homeschooling, the fun kind of distracted them. And I was at the point where I was no longer really able to calm my kids down enough for us to actually start homeschooling. And so that was another one of those things that I had to push to the side and say, okay, well, we're not going to be doing that anymore. And, the whole thing is that you can't be afraid to take what you would consider to be fun activities away from your homeschool if you see that it is interfering with their education. And I am all for doing fun things with your kids, fun activities with your kids. And it's not just fun for the kids. A lot of times, the parents really enjoy doing these things too. But as the facilitator, it is your responsibility to make sure that your kids are learning things and they're retaining things. And so you can't be afraid to just change things around if you have to. So, at the end of the day, if you feel like you need to take a step back and take inventory of your homeschool every now and then just think to yourself, okay, what's working? What isn't working? What was working before? And what seems to be not so much working now? If it turns out to be something that you put into your homeschool because you thought that it would be like a fun reprieve for everyone, but if you see that it is actually taking away from the rest of your day, don't feel bad about having to change things around. There's a high likelihood that you're always going to find something else that you can use to replace it in the long run. But, I just want you to remember that. So what I want you to remember is that don't avoid doing things just because they aren't fun. And I know that you're probably thinking, oh my gosh, what is she saying? Because I do talk about, having fun with your kids all the time. But the thing is that some things in life aren't fun. And that's the gist of it. And your kids are going to have to learn that at some point. So it's okay. You don't have to have, like a carnival going every day of your homeschool. Real life has its ups and downs, and your homeschool is going to as well. And, that's okay. And I just want to remind you also is don't let that fun drive your kids to distraction. Believe me, I have been there, and, your kids will forgive you if you take away something that they enjoy. And, maybe you could explain to them why it is that you're not doing that activity anymore. And, maybe that might help them to want to change that behavior so that you can keep doing that activity. Or they might understand and they might say, okay, yeah, maybe it is time to move on. But again, this is just a responsibility that you take as a homeschooling parent. And above all else, the most important thing about your home education really is, keeping that relationship going with your kids. You want to have a good relationship with them, but you also want to make sure that, yes, your kids are being educated. So that's all that I have for you today. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet and would like to hear more of what I have to say, I would love if you would do that. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave one over on Instagram because YouTube always disables my comments. And if you like my work and would like to check out my Patreon page, I will leave a link in the description box for that as well. And today I want to give a shout out to my Patreon patron, Amber. Amber, thank you so much for supporting me. Everyone is such an encouragement. I've gotten so many great ideas from the people over on Patreon, and it just really helps me to keep doing what I'm doing, which I'm going to be honest with you isn't always easy. So thank you again, Amber, and I hope you all have a great day.